Hey, everybody. So I'm here with Dana again, and we're going to talk about some more Batman stuff for you. But first of all, hi, Dana. How you doing?
Hi, Steve. And hi, everybody.
So we're going to discuss a question that yeah, that's it.
I'm excited about this question.
We're going to discuss a question. And it's a question that I know I've heard people talk about a lot in Batman fandom, especially the last few years, but I feel like it's something that has been a recurring subject probably since the 80s, I would say. And that is Batman as a character fascist? We were talking earlier before we started recording, and I think one of the things to discuss and to sort of keep in mind is oh, by the way, yeah, you just reminded me with your adorable little point to your
which they couldn't see because you've got it on speaker mode.
Well, they can see it now.
Oh yeah, but they didn't get to see the point. See,
I think they did see the point actually, because that's how I saw it.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm looking at my I'm looking at my encoder. I'm not looking at the Zoom call, but you are recording your half of this from Disney World, and I hope this does not endanger your safety. Speaking about Warner Brothers intellectual property while on a Disney resort, I hope the stormtroopers don't break down the door and drag you away.
You haven't posted it anywhere, so
not yet.
It's kind of out in the ether.
By the time I do post it, you'll be safely away.
I will. I will have absconded.
So take that, Disney.
But I have ears. Look. Well, for now anyway. See if I move my head, then they're actually just decorations in the wall. In case you hadn't already realized, but you have relatively perceptive fans. They sometimes they pick up on things.
They look like gigantic lollipops just nailed to the wall. Like gigantic psychedelic lollipops.
They would be like psychedelic enormous jawbreakers, not lollipops. There's no stick.
Well, pardon me.
That's okay.
Precision.
We're solved.
Thank you. Precision.
I'm a priest, though, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean,
it's the thought.
I think we both come from Protestant traditions, so is it really that important?
Protestants have priests.
That's true. We both come from Methodist backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, there you go. No priest, just potluck.
That's the slogan. I think that's what they say on the church. No priests, just potluck. Methodism.
So the slogan's actually open hearts, open minds, open doors, but I think no priest, just potluck is better. It's
pithier.
It really is. And it carries that same sort of parallelism, Yeah, also,
I like it.
Food, so yeah, we should pitch that.
I think we definitely need to write. We need to write something up and pitch this to the Methodist Church.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but there's possibly a split coming up. So one of them could have one, and the other one could have the other one. We should pitch our version to whichever we decide is the better side.
So if they do split, is one of the sides still going to be called United Methodists? Because that doesn't seem right.
Heck if I know. Although this
has nothing to do with Batman, by the way.
Total tangent.
No, but but watch this. Watch me drag it back. Okay. Watch me drag this back, Dana. You're going to love this.
See,
okay.
This is you're the pro. You know what you're doing.
How good I am at this remains to be seen. You said that they weren't giant lollipops behind you because they don't have a stick, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's important because precision matters, Dana.
It does.
And precision matters in our... Go ahead.
In how we define our terms.
Yes, exactly. See? You knew where I was. You knew right where I was going with that.
I figured it out.
Yes, you solved my cunning puzzle. my deviously constructed conundrum. You solved it.
Because take that, you Riddler.
So it matters what we mean when we say fascist, because there are different dictionary definitions for the term, and there are different ways in which the term fascist is used. Like, I think if someone is describing Batman as being fascist and they're using fascist in a very strict sense of referring to like a political ideology or a movement.
Well, then they wouldn't say it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, because I definitely don't think Batman qualifies as fascist in that sense. Like, he is not, except maybe, I'm sure that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure there have been like Elseworld stories where Batman was literally a fascist. But other than special circumstances like that, I don't think there's like a mainstream version of Batman that you could ever say was that kind of a fascist.
Yeah. Well, because he is, I mean, in that case, belonging to a larger group, he kind of doesn't. Like,
right.
We'll get into his authoritarian tendencies, but the thing is, he's not in a group that follows an authoritarian, like, because he's not really good at taking direction from others.
No, he's really not.
He's really not. I mean, he's in some versions of him, he is good at listening to others and considering whether what they say has merit, and sometimes it does. And if he decides that it does, then okay, he'll go with it. And if he decides that it doesn't, then he doesn't go with that. It's very, very independent, and so rejection of authoritarianism from somebody else.
Right.
So in that sense, somewhat non-fascist.
It not only matters what we mean when we say fascism, it also matters which Batman we're talking about, because the character has been published in comic books continuously every month for 80 years. And plus there's all the TV. To steal from Taylor Molly, since, a long time ago. Exactly. Since 1939, in fact. And so there have been all the different comics, all the different creative teams over the decades. There have been the TV shows, the animated series, all the movies. Like, there's so many different versions of Batman. So it matters which version of Batman you're talking about.
Role-playing game version.
Yeah.
Card game version.
The BBC audio drama version, a favorite of mine, I must say. The BBC audio drama of Nightfall is tremendous. And one of the versions of Batman that is cited most frequently by people who make the argument that Batman is fascist is Frank Miller's Batman, and specifically Dark Knight Returns Batman.
I would like to point out that Dark Knight Returns is like it's not canon. I'm just
no.
That out there, but I mean, it is a very influential story.
Yeah.
So there's that.
It's canonical in the literary sense. It's canonical in the
that's a good way of putting it.
In the sense that it's a seminal work for the character, but it takes place outside the generally accepted DC continuity.
Not real Batman, okay?
It's not real Batman. And I say specifically Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller Batman, because Frank Miller also wrote Batman Year One, and I don't hear Batman Year One cited as often as an example of fascist Batman, but I hear Dark Knight Returns cited as the example of fascist Batman a lot. So I thought it would be interesting to sort of consider what aspects of Batman as he is presented in The Dark Knight Returns that could be considered fascist, and when we use the term fascist in a more general sense, because a lot of times when people say such and such is fascist, they're not using it in the sense of saying that thing is part of a fascist political movement. They're saying that it's authoritarian, or it's violent, or it's dictatorial, or in a more sort of general sense.
Colloquially, as we say in the biz.
Yes, exactly. In the biz.
Literary analysis.
That's true.
Grammar and there's a word for this. Brain not braining.
So ironic that
linguistics. Yeah.
There you go.
No. Yeah.
I forgot the word for linguistics, and that, children, is irony.
Situational irony, to be precise.
Now you redeemed yourself.
I did.
You brought it back.
Yeah. But before we go there, because
yes, please.
When we were sort of setting up the notes for this, you talked about Frank Miller's Batman and specifically The Dark Knight Returns, and then you didn't mention this earlier about Frank Miller writing Year One.
Right.
So that to me says that even Frank Miller kind of views the more, I sort of want us to contrast, think about the differences between Batman as Frank Miller, specifically the two different versions of Frank Miller's Batman, as he is in Dark Knight Returns, as he is in Frank Miller's Year One. Because apparently, so why are people, is it just that Dark Knight Returns is older and more influential?
Well, I mean, if it's really not that much older though, because I think because Year One was what, 87 or 88, and Dark Knight Returns was 86, I think.
Really? They were that close together?
They were that close together. And the other thing is, when it was published, I don't think this is the case anymore, but when it was published, Batman Year One was canon.
Yes. It's been rebooted like 8 times since then.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, when it was originally written, it was intended to be in continuity with the rest of the DC universe. So Frank Miller
kind of had to play nice. And so I think that says something as, Frank Miller's version of nice, let's be real. Whereas Dark Knight Returns is, he can do what he wants. It's just his story.
Like there are panels in The Dark Knight Returns that could be interpreted in a more charitable way, that could be interpreted as simply romantic in the literary sense, is the same way that you would think about, like a painting of a scene from the French Revolution or something. You know what I mean? Like it's a bold romantic scene. Like everybody talks about the scene in Dark Knight Returns near the end when Batman is riding the horses. When Batman and like it's a very romantic image. Batman in full costume riding a horse. To confront the bad guys. But from a certain perspective, that could also be viewed as fascist because you have this larger than life hero fighting a battle against this corrupt world, this world that's gone wrong, and has become decadent and needs to be smashed and destroyed and rescued by this great hero.
Wait. A world that's gone wrong and needs to be destroyed so that it can be rebuilt. I mean, that's like any revolutionary. That's any revolutionary.
That's true.
That's not necessarily fascist.
It's not necessarily fascist, but I think it is a part of a lot of fascist movements. The part of the fascist narrative often is
revolutionary.
It is. There is a revolutionary part to it, and there are other things to it as well, like demonizing a particular group. To blame the downfall of society on them specifically. And the idea of returning to a glorious past, that's often a part of it. And you could maybe make that connection with Batman, riding on the horse. It's like, the modern and
earlier mode of transportation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
I wasn't sure where you're going with that, but and I'm like, returning to a glorious past kind of really isn't, which is interesting because it totally could be.
I think
given that he wants to take care of Gotham, and that he is shaped by the death of the murder of his parents. They could the writers just throughout continuity could easily have gone the route of that he wants to take Gotham back to what it once was. I don't think we've ever seen that.
No, and it's mostly there by implication in Dark Knight Returns, I think, because the premise of the story is it's about Batman coming back. Like Batman has been gone, or at least he hasn't been Batman for a while, and now he's coming back. So he is literally a representative of
the past.
of
which
the
is
past.
Which is why which is the biggest reason that I don't like this story.
I know we've talked about this for 20 years. How you don't like the Dark Knight Returns because you just don't.
It's built on a flawed premise.
Yeah,
you just quit. And I don't think Miller ever goes into why because there is no why, because it's a bad idea, Miller. Not even sorry. Not at all. He's just wrong.
I mean, given how Frank Miller turned out, I really don't feel like fighting you that much on this. It's like, yeah, to hell with Frank Miller.
Nothing even personal about it. Just like this story was badly written.
We shouldn't have to do this.
We shouldn't have to have this conversation. We shouldn't have to do this.
I wrote down a couple of things about Frank Miller's Batman in terms of characteristics that could potentially be interpreted as fascist. And some of these are things that are shared with other versions of Batman, obviously. And they're not all necessarily fascist, like we were saying a minute ago about, the revolutionary character of fascist movements. There's non-fascist movements that are also revolutionary.
You think?
Yeah. So I've heard. But so Frank Miller's Batman is I think it's fair to say, especially violent. And
that's saying something for Batman.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind as well, it would have seemed even more violent in the mid-'80s when it first was published, because even though Batman had been moving in a slightly more serious direction throughout the 70s, like if you read those 1970s and early 80s, like, the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams comics and stuff like that, or Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers, it's much more serious than stuff was in the 60s. It's not like the goofy Silver Age stuff.
Yeah. But, again, not saying much there.
Yeah. But it's not.
Batman was much darker in the 80s.
Yeah, it's
compared to the 60s.
Compared to the 60s. Well, but even also
compared to the 90s.
Yeah, that's true. He was on a very dark path for quite a few decades. But yeah, so
it changed as it does.
Even compared to the 70s, I think it was at the time it was notably darker, because the 70s stuff was not nearly as grim. Right. As Dark Knight Returns was. So very violent. Batman himself is very authoritarian, uncompromising, not necessarily all that interested in hearing what you have to say if he has made up his mind about this is the way things have to go.
It is the way.
Yeah. This is the way.
See, here we are. Now to Disney, is that okay?
He doesn't take off his mask in front of other people.
Except Alfred.
But he's heavily armed. The Batmobile in Dark Knight Returns is literally a tank, which was always one of my least favorite things. I'm still, generally speaking, an admirer of Dark Knight Returns. I think it's a good story, but the Batmobile in Dark Knight Returns, I absolutely hate it, because it's a tank. It's Batman driving a tank, and I hate that. And I hate that they.
Why do you hate that?
Because Batman shouldn't have a tank. Like, what?
Okay.
Why does Batman have a tank?
Because he's rich.
Yeah.
And apparently, the Second Amendment, pro-capitalist, you can buy whatever kind of arms you want, folks, have won out in that version of the future.
Yeah, apparently. Well, that's the other thing is Batman doesn't use guns explicitly in Dark Knight Returns, but I feel like Batman having a tank sort of opened the door for other creators to say, well, maybe he uses guns sometimes. Like, because in almost every version of the Batmobile that we've seen in a live action movie, the Batmobile has mounted guns. Mm-hmm. And Batman doesn't usually shoot them at people. Unless it's a fantasy sequence in a Zack Snyder movie, because Zack Snyder is a psychopath who just wants, he's always looking for excuses to show Batman murdering people with guns because he's a psychopath.
Oh, tell us how you feel about Zack Snyder.
I don't care for him as a filmmaker at all.
Really? I never would have guessed that. I hadn't picked up on that.
I don't like his work, generally speaking. I
don't like it.
I don't like it. But so I feel like Frank Miller kind of opened the door for that by saying, yeah, Batman has a tank.
All right. I'm just going to point out here that the Batman using guns has become a thing, but it wasn't always a thing. It is kind of general canon that Batman doesn't use guns.
Yeah.
But, that can change,
It can.
I'm just saying.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right.
But I think our version of Batman does not use guns.
Oh, absolutely not. Our version of Batman detests guns.
Really?
Absolutely. Or at least my version. I mean, maybe our version doesn't, but my version of Batman absolutely despises guns.
Oh, that's interesting. We may have to talk about that.
Yeah. There's a line that he has in the Untold Legend of Batman comic miniseries from the early 80s. He says, "I despise guns and the cowardly creeps that use them." And that sums up my attitude. What I think Batman's attitudes toward guns should be.
Such a nerd. Just pull this one line of dialogue out. God, you're such a nerd, and it's great.
Thank you.
You own that nerddom.
I think I am. I'm trying to.
With your Nightwing shirt.
That's right. Frank Miller's Batman is the lone hero against a corrupted society. Society in Dark Knight Returns has become so corrupted that even Superman is an agent of the corrupt government. Batman he's the last hero, the last hope to bring society back to the way it should be, to the way it was before. And that's another thing. He's a representative of a bygone tradition. We mentioned that a minute ago. That he has been retired for a long time, and now he is coming back. He is literally a man from the past trying to bring a piece of that past back to the present, because the idea is that we need that. We need to return to what we once had.
Is he attempting to make America wonderful again?
Or at least Gotham, anyway.
Yeah.
You can't, that's not a pronounceable acronym, though. Make Gotham great again? Not enough vowels. But yeah, and he shows contempt for his enemies. Not all of them. There's a moment of empathy in Dark Knight Returns between Batman and Two-Face. But generally speaking, he displays a lot of contempt for his enemies, especially for the street gangs that he encounters in the Dark Knight version of Gotham. So again, not all of those are always fascist, and not all forms of fascism have all of those, and and there are versions of Batman that are less fascist than Frank Miller's that have some of those traits. But I feel like those are the really, really fashy parts of Frank Miller's Batman.
So you said those are the fashy parts, but are there parts of fascism that even the most fascist version of Batman that is popularly known does not show? Nationalism.
I don't think you can
on Gotham than on the nation as a whole.
Yeah,
I think that's still even true in Miller's Batman.
Also, you do see moments of weakness. You do see moments of vulnerability, and you do see moments, little glimmers of self-awareness, like in the scene I mentioned a minute ago with him and Two-Face, where he's in Dark Knight Returns, Two-Face has had plastic surgery, so he doesn't look like Two-Face anymore. He looks like Harvey Dent, but he's still Two-Face. He's still a criminal. And there's the famous exchange where after Batman catches him, and Harvey says something like, you look at me and tell me honestly what you see when you look at me. And Batman says, "I see a reflection, Harvey." And that is a moment of self-awareness and of introspection that you wouldn't you wouldn't associate with a fascist. Fascists aren't really into the whole introspection thing.
Well, also it goes against the whole not, what did you say, contempt for enemies.
Oh, yes.
Adversaries. It's empathizing.
Yeah.
Which is, that's a no-no.
Umberto Eco wrote in 1995, he wrote an essay for the New York Review of Books called Ur-Fascism. And it's a really good essay if you want to look for it and read it in its entirety. But the part we're going to talk about is Eco lists 14 things that he considers characteristics of fascism in the broad sense, or he calls it eternal fascism, like the sort of elements that might allow for an organized fascist movement to rise up and take root. And so some of them we've already talked about in reference to Batman, like the obsession with tradition. Or the number 2 is the rejection of modernism. I don't know if you could. I don't think there's ever been a version of Batman that has explicitly been a rejection of modernism.
No, I don't think so.
No,
he has to have his wonderful toys.
Exactly. There's also the cult of action for action's sake. I don't know if that. I mean, Batman is usually depicted as an action hero, but he's also
purposeful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. He's also supposed to be smart and a meticulous planner. And yeah, I don't think action for action's sake would describe Batman. Disagreement is treason. I don't know. I mean, maybe if Robin like really goes against him, he might be like, but that seems a little harsh.
Yeah, but then, Robin just punches him in the face.
Yeah, as we have seen. Yes, absolutely. Fear of difference. Which we could boil it down to bigotry or racism. I don't think that's part of Batman. At least that's not an explicit part of Batman.
Yeah. And also, I mean, in a broader sense, it is creating fear of difference with the objective of increasing tribalism, as
right.
in, marking a difference between those who are accepted and those who are rejected, those who are in and those who are out. And so the purpose for the fear of difference is to keep those who are in, keep them strong in the tradition.
Right.
And so that fear is necessary to dehumanize even the outsiders, to push them away, say we are not them. That rejection is not the word that I'm looking for. Anyway, I'll figure it out. Like
repudiation, maybe.
Fix it in post. Nope, that's not it.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, just like I don't know.
If you think of it, and even if it's after we're done recording, just record yourself saying it, and I'll drop it in, and it'll be like a badly dubbed Godzilla movie.
Yes. Like in Galaxy Quest. Well, screw that.
Yes. It's just
my favorite moment.
They wanted that PG, baby. Oh no, we can't say that.
Nope. No PG-13. Gotta have it PG. Changed our minds.
We want the money. Yeah, so appeal to social frustration. See, because Batman, I don't know if you could call that part of most versions of Batman, because Batman is a vigilante. Batman operates in the shadows. Batman is not a leader.
He's not a very social kind of guy.
No. Also, the obsession with a plot. I don't think that really applies to Batman.
No, he's not conspiratorial.
No, he's not paranoid in that way. Actually, most versions of Batman, except for the fact that he's Batman and seems to think that's a normal thing to do, he's fairly...
I don't think he thinks that's a normal thing to do. And I would say that leans toward, Batman is fascist, is that, it's not a normal thing to do. But, I am the exception. It's okay for me, this needs to be done. And somebody's got to do it, and that somebody's going to be me.
You're right. Yeah. But I was my main point was like, he's not other than being Batman, he's usually not depicted as being mentally unstable or unbalanced or deranged or paranoid or anything like that. Except for all the Batman stuff. He's a fairly well-adjusted.
Actually being Batman.
Yeah. He's a fairly clear-headed guy, except for the whole Batman thing.
Except for that.
And we know
one thing.
But, we know from his utility belt that he is very good at compartmentalization.
That's good.
You like that?
It's incredibly cheesy.
Thank you.
I like cheesy, though, so.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm glad.
All right, what else?
I liked it, but let's move on.
Small doses.
The depiction of enemies as simultaneously too strong and too weak. There are ways to look at this that could apply to Batman.
Yeah, but I think some of that is just narrative.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've talked about, the difficulties in when you have recurring villains. Each time they have to be badder than the last time, and that, that can create challenges with creating a good story. That it becomes repetitive and cyclical.
The pitching of life as a struggle.
Yeah, that's a real stretch.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
That's part of the definition of Eco's definition of fascism. I don't know, because that means you could say the Princess Bride is fascist.
Well,
life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something.
Fascist.
Yeah, geez.
Wesley, that well-known fascist.
Yeah, no, that one, I don't know. I might have trouble with that part of the definition there.
The dread fascist Roberts.
Well, I think he would certainly be dreadful if he would be more dreadful if he was a fascist.
I would agree. Contempt for the weak.
Yeah, that's definitely part of fascism. I don't think I don't see that in Batman.
Me neither.
I think Batman has. I mean, that's part of why he does what he does.
Even the Miller Dark Knight Batman, even though he does demonstrate contempt for his enemies, we see that
because they want to prey on the weak.
Right. We see that he is capable of compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And specifically for those weaker than himself. That's
right.
That's just not it.
The cult of heroism.
Is Miller's Batman venerated? I think by some people he ends up
a little bit at the end, yeah, when he becomes when the street gang, after he defeats the leader of the street gang of the mutants, and they sort of pledge their loyalty to him.
I think there's definitely enough ambiguity on that one. Like there within the story, there are people who are like, well, Batman's doing what nobody else will, and then there are people who are like, yeah, nobody else will because it's a crappy thing to do.
Maybe nobody should.
We're just saying there. I think Batman has like is kind of like Spider-Man in that regard, that he has some bad publicity, but he earns it more. He deserves it.
Exactly.
He's a decent kind of guy. Batman is not always a decent kind of guy.
No, he's
writing him.
He's not usually your friendly neighborhood Batman, is he?
So much. And by not usually, you mean like, ever.
Like since 1969, not ever really. It's not since Adam West. Adam West was your friendly neighborhood Batman.
He was. He was.
Not since then so much.
Not so much.
A preoccupation with machismo and weaponry. I think this is getting closer. I think.
With the square jaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the wonderful toys. Not all of them weapons, but kind of a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Non-lethal, it must be said, but still. Like there's...
No, see, I mean, non-lethal only in the technical sense.
That's true.
Batman.
That's...
he's very resourceful.
Selective populism. I don't know if... Again, because Batman isn't really so much of a populist.
Yeah.
Nah, not so much.
Yeah.
And this last one is interesting because the use and obsession with newspeak. At first blush, I would say no, Batman doesn't utilize newspeak. But I guess it depends on how you interpret stuff like Batmobile, Batarang. You know, he does tend to,
I'm gonna disagree with Eco on this one again.
Okay.
Because the purpose of newspeak and you know, having just been Syme specifically in a production in 1984, I've been thinking about, or I was thinking about newspeak a lot.
Yeah.
And I've disagreed with Orwell for a while on this. I just, in a broad sense, and also because we've been talking about the dispossessed, which talks about language differences, because you have Pravik and Neotic, the various languages, and of course the book is written in English, but that's not what the characters speak anyway. So you know, she talks about some of the difficulties in getting some of these ideas across. So while the words that we have do shape the way that we perceive and think about things in our framework, they also reflect that framework. And so there is a sense in which you cannot simply reshape language. There is a sense in which, you know, society at large, the way that language is used happens somewhat organically. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to control that. And so I think what we've seen in the last several years on the political scene is more of newspeak in a sense of the truth is what I say it is, regardless of the words used. The truth is what I say it is. And I think that reflects more of what is more fascist. It's because it's also an appeal to authority. It is saying that I have this power to define reality and define truth. So it's not just about the words. And I think that fits in more with Batman because of that, you know, but at the same time, no, because he's more of, we're going to do what I say we're going to do. He does not reject observable fact. He takes that in and he will absolutely, you know, refine his plans based on new information. He just, you know, tends to get a lot of information before making his plans. He's, you know, detective.
We've discussed various ways in which Batman could be fascist or versions of Batman that might be fascist or have fascistic tendencies or characteristics. It might be, might be a little fashy.
There you go.
But the question that is the title of the video is Batman inherently fascist? And what about the fact that in virtually every version of the character, however benign he is, whether it's Adam West Batman or Frank Miller Batman or Christopher Nolan Batman or whatever, Batman is always Zack Snyder Batman. Batman.
A bad mood with that.
Batman, just by the nature of the character, is a vigilante, is someone who is an agent in service of the state, but doesn't literally work for the state, but is still furthering state interests, and is doing so using violence, and is usually portrayed as an ally of the police. If not, in some cases, I think, again, in the Adam West version, he was referred to as deputized, like he was sort of an official agent of the police.
And a cop, jeez.
Is he inherently fascist? Is there a part of him that you just can't get away from the fact that he's always going to be a little fashy just because of what he does?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I think it is possible to write Batman as acting in service of the population, of the populace, not the state per se. Mm-hmm. I think that different versions of Batman have gone about it and have been written in different ways, specifically in dealing with the Gotham City police. Just how corrupt are they, and how, what is their view of Batman, and how much does he work with them, that kind of thing. So there are definitely different frameworks for that, but I think it would be absolutely possible for Batman to not only not be an agent of the state. You could have Batman and have him be fully vigilante and not work with the Gotham police. I think that would still work. I don't think we've seen that because I think the idea that policing is fascist inherently is not mainstream enough for people, for the writers at DC to have considered a non-allied Batman. To what extent does fascism involve being watched?
It's interesting you bring that up because you reminded me I did want to talk a little bit about Batman in the Christopher Nolan movies, because that is another version of the character that is sometimes described as being fascist. And that surveillance issue is something that is brought up a lot, because in The Dark Knight, it is crucial to Batman finding and catching the Joker that he is able to basically hack into everybody's cell phones and use them to triangulate the locations of specific people. And that's how he is able to find the Joker. And a lot of people view that. And of course, this is, the movie came out in 2008. This was at the end of the Bush administration. We had the Patriot Act. We had all of these sort of these violations of civil liberties in the name of, well, we have to do this to catch the terrorists. We have to do this to keep people safe.
Catch the bad guys.
Yeah. And that's literally what Batman does in the movie. He violates people's privacy to catch the bad guy. And this is where we get into the issue of, just because the character does something that could be interpreted as fascist in the story, does that mean that the story itself is fascist? Because the way I interpret The Dark Knight, and you've told me before, I don't think you've actually seen it, so you don't.
Nope.
So you can't necessarily agree or disagree with me on this, but I have thought
I'm familiar with that part of the narrative,
with that plot point.
Yep.
I think that the movie does not necessarily want us to approve of Batman doing that.
Yeah, I think framing is important.
Yeah. I think there are enough things in the story that indicate that we are not supposed to think that we're supposed to think that Batman is doing a necessary thing. And that's where it gets kind of messy.
But I think that's part of the point.
Yeah.
Is that tension between, how we make the choices that we do when we don't have a good option. How do we choose which option we're going to take? And I think that was the point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because when Batman he
says, having not seen the movie.
Well, I think you're right, though. I think you're right, because what I'm about to say is,
I'm just that damn good.
You're very insightful. You're very sharp and insightful.
English teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Batman tells Lucius Fox about his machine that can eavesdrop on everybody and that they can use it to find the Joker, Lucius responds with open disapproval. He's like this. He literally says, "This is wrong."
Good for you, Lucius.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's wrong.
Lucius tells him that it's wrong, and he says, "This is too much power for one person to have." And Batman agrees with him, and he says, "That's why I'm giving it to you." And he lets Lucius operate the machine while Batman goes out and does the Batman thing and, uses the information that Lucius relays to him to catch the Joker. And then when the Joker has been captured and the crisis is over, he tells Lucius to type his name into the computer. And when Lucius does, it blows up. So it was a one-time only thing. And the implication is Batman has crossed this moral line and done this wrong thing in order to catch the Joker. But now that it's done, he has taken that option away from himself, so he can't do that anymore. So, and again, that's kind of messy. It's not like there's different directions you can go with that. But I feel like that's a pretty strong indication that the movie is telling us, okay, maybe Batman felt like he had to do this, and it worked out great because he caught the Joker and saved the day. But what he did was still wrong.
Yes.
And we don't.
And he knew it was wrong and did it anyway.
Yeah. So as long as that level of awareness is there on the part of the filmmakers, I don't think it's fair to say that the movie itself was fascist or authoritarian. And really, because Batman himself demonstrates that awareness in the story, I don't know if you could even say that Batman is fascist or authoritarian, even though he's willing to cross a line, but he is also cognizant of the fact that he is crossing a line, and he justifies it to a point because he does it, but he doesn't justify it far enough to say, yes, I deserve to have this power.
It's okay for me to do this.
Right. This is a tool that I can use now to protect people. And like he's aware that this is not a good idea, and he'll do it just this once and then no more. You
could go a lot of different directions with stories in the future. I mean, if he's developed this just this once, there's, obviously he could just do it again.
Right.
I mean,
sure could use that cell phone trick this time.
Just, write the code again. I mean, come on. You did it once. It should be easier the second time around. But I think we're supposed to read that as an indictment of the character. Not just that it's not okay for him to do this, not that the action's wrong, but also that it shows us that he is willing to know that something is wrong and do it anyway if he thinks it's necessary. And again, that goes back into the authoritarianism, that it's okay for me. I will do whatever it takes. So there's some fashy elements to that, but not, I think it's more protagonisty than fashy. It's like he's the guy. He's the hero. He does whatever it takes. And even if he knows it's wrong and there's some moral conundrums, that's he struggles with that. It's internal conflict. So whereas the fascist would be, yes, there's no internal conflict. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do for me to do this. You should not do this because it's wrong for you. But me, when I do it, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah. And that actually allows us to segue into the last thing that we wanted to talk about. We're just so good. We're just so good. And that is, if we do read Batman or watch Batman or whatever, and we come to the conclusion that he is fascist, or that a particular Batman story has fascy elements or whatever, what then do we do about it? And what do we do, just generally speaking, if we discover that a story or a character or some other form of media that we really enjoy has these very, very problematic elements? How do you, as someone who is anti-fascist but a lover of Batman, figure out what to do with that? How do you reconcile that conflict?
I have an answer. Let me tell you.
Please.
First of all, you write fanfic.
Ah, yes.
You fix it. You make it better. And absolutely. Just create something that's better. Use this, this conflict, that you have something that you love and there are problems with it. I mean, even if the problems with it are just like you have something you love and the problems are there are holes in the narrative or the characterization is poor, just make something better. Make something. Yay. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as an English teacher, write. Yes, more writing. Good for you. Do the writing. So that's part of it. But obviously, there's an option for self-reflection, because what is it about this character, this story, that draws you to that instead of some other character or some other story? And can you still have this character? Will you still like this character if it didn't have these elements? What does that say about how you've been influenced by the society that has led to the development and creation of this? And, how can you use what you're learning about yourself to become a better person? So sort of all that self-reflection. But then also, especially with a character with this much history and, this much development, you have the option to support the non-fascist versions and to not support and to speak out against, say, this isn't okay. This is and like we do. So this is not what we want for this character. As stories go forward in the future, this is no. I mean, this is not what I want. This is not what I will support with my money, and this is not what I will support with encourage other people to support as well. I think we have opportunities there. So
yeah. And a lot of it also comes down to, for me, the way that I read the character, because I have thought, and I didn't always attach it specifically to whether or not he had fascist elements. That's not something I really thought about a lot until probably 10 years ago when I first started hearing people mention it. And it never occurred to me, like, Batman's fascist? Really? I never thought so. And then over the last several years with the Trump administration, fascist being foremost in our minds a lot of the time, like, then it gets discussed a lot more. But I have thought for a very long time that Batman is just more interesting as a character if we acknowledge within his stories that what he is doing is not good. That we celebrate the heroic aspects of him, and we have him be a positive character who, he's fighting crime and he's helping people and he's a detective who's solving mysteries and there are good things that Batman does. But underneath it all, this is not something he should be doing. It's not good for him as a person. It's not his job. It's not his place to have this power, to have, to take this role in society outside the law, unaccountable for the most part to other people or other systems. He can basically just do what he wants and decide for himself who deserves to be punished. And, there are just things about Batman that I just think people shouldn't do.
I think that's also part of what makes a character interesting.
Yeah.
They do have problems. They're a character who always does the right thing. God, they're annoying. And especially if they don't have any problems, and they are always understanding and they're always kind. And Elsie Dinsmore, gosh, that's a name I haven't thought of in a while. There were these stories, and I'm sure there have been more of them, but in the Victorian era, there were stories for kids that were, meant to be morally uplifting. God, they're so funny because they're so bad, and they're just so preachy, and just like, you're just like, God, I just want to just smack them. These annoying characters. I mean, like, I don't know, did you ever read highlights?
Oh, yeah. I used to read highlights all the time.
Goofus and Gallant.
Yeah.
You just, no. Oh, my goodness gracious. They're just, yeah. Oh, my goodness. And he's a little Dudley Do-Right Gallant. I would much rather hang around with Goofus because there's going to be trouble. I can just blame him. Exactly.
The aptly named Goofus.
Yeah. I don't know. I would just, we were just hanging out and he decided to do something stupid.
Goofus gonna Goofus.
He's gonna goof. So. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, so that's part of why it's never bothered me. And I know, like, there are people who obviously, who aren't fans of the character and who cite what they see as the character's fascist characteristics as a reason why they don't dig Batman. And that's fine. You can like what you like and not like what you don't like. And, that's just the way it goes. Art is subjective. But it never bothered me because I thought if there are things that Batman does that are troubling, we can just fold those into the story. Like, we can just acknowledge them and say, yeah, maybe what he does is a little fascist. Maybe what he does is authoritarian. Is wrong, and for a variety of reasons. Let's acknowledge it, and let's make it part of the story, and let's explore it. and hopefully do something interesting with it. You know,
and I know we wanted to touch on, we sort of touched on his relationship with the police.
Yes.
And I
we're
know
gonna.
that's been a concern, but we wanted to talk about the fact that we put that in the notes and we noticed it was kind of taken over.
Yeah.
Separate video on Batman and the police.
Yes, I think that'll be our next Batman video.
Which is why we're bringing it up now.
Which is why we're bringing it up now. God, we're good. Yeah. So yeah,
there was nothing clunky about that transition.
Not at all. Smooth as silk. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about in our next Batman video. Batman's relationship with the police and all the wonderful problems that creates when you're trying to.
Of course, you say problems, and that means story opportunities.
Absolutely.
Well, let's be real. Oh, I'm excited about opportunities for exploring some of that in fanfic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because in fanfic, our Batman is the best Batman.
Of course. Oh gosh, I have so many plans, and just with Gordon's. Ooh, Jim not gonna be happy. It's like years in the future.
Oh, can you title the story that? Can you title the story "Jim not gonna be happy"?
Jim's not gonna be happy. Or maybe just Jim isn't happy.
Commissioner Gordon's no good, messed up, very bad day.
And he finds out about this thing.
Uh-oh. You're not going to like that. But yeah, so that'll be for our next Batman video. So everybody stay tuned for that.
Not the fanfic. Sorry,
not
guys.
the fanfic. No. That'll be when we're in our when we have rooms side by side in a retirement home and we're still writing fanfic.
What did you say, Stephen?
Turn your hearing aid up. Ageism. What a great note to end on.
What? Hey, there's nothing. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with aging. I've done it for my whole life.
Yeah, me too. I've gotten used to it, really. All right, so we'll talk about Batman's relationship with the cops in our next Batman video. Next time, same bat time, same bat channel.
You didn't forget this time.
I didn't forget. Didn't need anybody to remind me of that this time. All right, Dana, thank you as always for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve.
Absolutely, anytime. And thanks everybody for watching.
Bye.
See you next time.